We dig deeper into the Goff ratings snub.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? It is a Memorial Day Monday. Welcome into Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Derry with you on a Monday, Memorial Day Monday, May 27th, and a Tuesday, May 28th. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. You are listening to me with barely any voice. I apologize. This happens like twice a year where I get a bad cold that isn't really in my nose because I fight it off with a lot of Zicam and other stuff, but it's in my throat. So a little bit hoarse. I apologize. We're going to have Trevor Sikkema on today from Pro Football Focus. Let him do most of the talking today because it was his quarterback rankings that we vehemently disagreed with last week, where he ranked Jared Goff at number 16. We will get into that momentarily right here on Locked On Lions. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, today is a day to remember those that fought for our country and defended our country. So shout out to the families of those that lost loved ones fighting for our country, our troops, and everything else here on a beautiful Memorial Day as we remember all of them. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter, and the Matt Derry Facebook fan page. Two quick nuggets before we talk to Trevor Sikkema from PFF. Of course, the Lions continue OTAs back up tomorrow, having today off and the weekend off as the fellows were working out last week. Number one, everybody today in the sports world is talking about the death of Bill Walton, 71 years of age, NBA legend, college basketball legend, unbelievable broadcaster who passed away today of cancer. Bill Walton was like, you watched him on television, and whether you thought he was funny or you thought he was stupid or you thought it was over the top, the one thing that you loved about Bill Walton was that he loved life. All right. One of my very good friends is Dave Pasch, of course, from ESPN. Dave worked with Bill Walton for 12 years on those Pac-12 late night ESPN college basketball games on Thursday nights and Saturday nights. And the two of them became an unbelievable show. I couldn't care less about Oregon against Arizona State on a Thursday night at 10:30 on ESPN, but I was glued to it, watching Dave and Bill and how funny they were and how entertaining they were. And so Bill Walton was larger than life, 7 feet tall. You see him at a Grateful Dead concert with a tie-dye shirt on. He just loved life. And so for the Pac-12 to die as it is, the conference, and Bill Walton now to pass away with it, the man who dubbed the Pac-12 the Conference of Champions, is sort of apropos because Pac-12 was made the last few years by Bill's love for it. So condolences certainly to Lori, his wife Lori, and his whole family. Man, what a larger than life guy Bill Walton. Never had a chance to really meet him. I saw him a couple times. Remember, Bill Walton called the Malice at the Palace on ESPN with Mike Breen years ago. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you I knew Bill Walton. I did not, but man, he brought a lot of joy to so many basketball fans. That's number one. Number two, Tom Brady was on the Colin Cowherd show earlier today on Fox, and I was in the car and had a chance to listen to the interview. And one thing that stood out for me that was Lions related, although Detroit's name was barely brought up, Brady did mention that he's going to be doing the Lions and Cowboys game on October 13th, the 425 Fox game. That will be Tom Brady broadcasting the Lions in week 6. But what was interesting was Brady was talking to Cowherd about offensive lines, and Colin was making the point about Aaron Rodgers playing behind that pretty bad Jets offensive line last year. Was really bad. And the hope is that they've revamped it this year. And Tom talked about how important it is to have an offensive line, to move people in the run game, to pass block so that on that 3rd and long, the quarterback has time to throw. And Brady was talking about the center position, how important it is. And it just made me think about the Lions and how important it's going to be this year that this offensive line continues to play like it's played the last couple of years. You're bringing back Taylor Decker. You're bringing back Frank Ragnow. You're bringing back Panay Sewell and Graham Glasgow, and you're adding an all-pro and a Pro Bowler in Kevin Zeitler. It's just so vital. It screams success for the Lions the last couple of years that they've had that O-line intact, and they've got guys like Ragnow and Sewell who are every year all-pros now. They really are. And so it just made me think about how important that position, that group is to this Lions team. And it made me kind of understand why Brad Holmes took a shot on Giovanni Manu when he did this year in the draft, because he's hoping to develop another really good one on that offensive line. So Lions O-line is one of the tops in the league. PFF has it graded number 2. And, if that continues, that will only give Jared Goff and this offense that much more opportunity for success. So it was kind of a cool interview. Go back and check that out. Check out Colin Cowherd's interview. It's all over the internet with Tom Brady today. All right, Trevor Sikkema's PFF quarterback ratings. He had Jared Goff. We talked about this last week, but in case you didn't see it, he had Goff 16 out of 32 quarterbacks. He had Kirk Cousins at 15. He had Tua Tagovailoa at 14, Brock Purdy at 13, Trevor Lawrence at 12, Jordan Love at 11, and CJ Stroud at 10. Hurts 9, Rodgers 8, Stafford 7, Prescott 6, Herbert 5, Josh Allen at 4, no argument. Joe Burrow at 3, no argument. Lamar Jackson, and then number 1 was Patrick Mahomes. Jared Goff, to me, is a top 12 quarterback in this league. Brock Purdy ahead of him is wrong. Tua is wrong, in my opinion. CJ Stroud's had one good year. Jordan Love's had one half of a good year. But this is what Trevor believes, and we're going to ask him about it coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Excuse me, as we mentioned before, Locked On Lions is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, folks. It is simple. If you're betting on this NBA NHL playoffs, FanDuel, excuse me, is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. FanDuel is just the best. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count with our friends at FanDuel. All right, folks, here we go. Trevor Sikkema with us from PFF. We've been talking about this for the last couple of days, having him on the program. He's been so good to the Lions. Great offseason, great draft, but his latest PFF quarterback ratings have Jared Goff at number 16. Trevor, good to see you. And what were you thinking?
Well, Matt, it's always good to be with you, my friend.
Yes.
Look, I couldn't just give the Lions, just like the highest praise all around, because then it wouldn't be valuable.
That's right.
Then I'd just be some Lions homer, and that wouldn't be great. Look, when it came to Jared Goff is a really tough quarterback to place. I had these quarterbacks in this exercise where I ranked all 32 starters going into the year. I kind of broke it up into tiers because I think that that's the appropriate way to rank a lot of these quarterbacks. And Goff is number 16, yes, but he's within this tier of what I call a melting pot of starters, right? And it includes guys like Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, like these guys where they're so different. Their strengths and weaknesses are so different. It's hard to really rank them. And so this group of quarterbacks, more than any other, is sort of a, pick your preference, whatever your flavor is of quarterbacks. And of course, I can totally understand. If Lions fans weren't upset with me, I'd be shocked, right? Because this is a team that has had a lot of offensive success over the last couple of years. Certainly his pairing with guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, certainly the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, has risen this offense to new heights and now gets the Lions to a Super Bowl ceiling. And so I can totally understand why seeing him at number 16 dead in the middle of a quarterback ranking would make people go like, whoa, hold on. Like, this is a team that's going to contend for the Super Bowl. People are going to talk about the Lions as a top 5 team. Jared Goff just signed a massive extension. But, when I look at Goff, I had him a little bit higher on the list initially, but then I brought him down a little bit because ultimately when I looked at his year last year, it was one of his best seasons as a Detroit Lion. Yeah. But even with that being said, it was still only about 3.4 big time throw percentages, which, at PFF, for anybody out there that doesn't know, we try to contextualize good throws and bad throws more than just touchdowns and interceptions, because there could be a amazing throw that a quarterback makes that, let's say it's a big throw, big part of the game between tight coverage, but it only goes for 25 yards, right? It's not a touchdown. It's nothing like that. Well, we still want to give that quarterback credit. So we call those things big time throws. And his big time throw percentage of 3.4 last year was his best since his days as a Los Angeles Ram, but it was still well short of some of the better quarterbacks in the league that are continually pushing the ball deeper down the field. Obviously the guys at the very top, the Josh Allens, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrows, those guys, when they're playing at their best, their big time throw percentages are 5, 6, sometimes even 7%. And Goff's 3.4, like I said, it's his best. And I want to give him credit for that. It was his best since he became a Detroit Lion, but it's still lower, even relative to guys like Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, that I have ranked ahead of him. So that's kind of where I'm at with Jared Goff and how he stacks up against some of those other guys.
Okay, let me fight you a little bit on this.
Let's do it.
Jared Goff, like you mentioned Tua, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tua's video game numbers. Tua's got Tyreek Hill. Tua goes on the road in a big game and never wins, ever. Right, Trev? Like, Jared Goff in week 18 2 years ago outplayed Aaron Rodgers and sent the Packers home. Like, how much do you weigh any of that in at all? Like, wins and losses. You mentioned big time throws, but like, yes, Goff gets it to Amon-Ra and he runs 50 yards. I could see that being, that's more of a basic throw. But you see what I'm saying on?
Yes.
I mean, Tua Tagovailoa, God bless him. He does put up unbelievable numbers, but I'll take Goff because what big game is Tua won?
Yeah, and that argument kind of exists throughout the rankings, and it sort of depends. I think that if you ask different people to rank quarterbacks around the NFL, it's hard because there's always different criteria, right? For example, I have Dak Prescott ranked at number 6. I have him ranked ahead of guys like Jalen Hurts and CJ Stroud and Matthew Stafford, and people and people who aren't Cowboys fans are, I get it. You look at Dak, and the last game of the season was when Dallas hosted the Green Bay Packers, and it was one of the worst games of his career, right? And Dak has been known to not be able to play at a high level in the postseason. But then look at his regular season last year. Dak played like an MVP. His big time throws were insane. His turnover worthy play rate was so low. He was an assassin last year. He played incredible for 17 games in the regular season, and just, in the game that matters. I get it. And that's something that it's hard to know, like, okay, how much weight do you necessarily put into that? And when it comes to Goff, yes, of course, like, I want to give him credit for those good games. It's ultimately why, look, Tua, I bring up Tua and you bring up Tua, and he's a really good example. Over the last 2 years, Tua's had the highest passing grade in our system of any quarterback. His big time throws are kind of through the roof. His huge passes in that Mike McDaniel system are great, but I think I had him 14th in the rankings.
Yep.
And people would go, well, and Miami Dolphins fans, kind of came after me a little bit, and they're like, wait, do you not even trust your own system? And you got to kind of understand what PFF is. PFF is grading a player for the success level that they can have in certain situations, right? It's more of a success level indicator than necessarily a talent level indicator. Talent level indicator kind of has to be in the eye of the beholder. You have to go a little bit further to understand that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Goff, I would say the areas where the reason why I kind of hold him back a little bit is because he is a hyper efficient player, but when you force him off of his spot, it's tough. When you pressure him, now he got a lot better this past year, and I want to obviously give him credit for that.
Yeah.
But when you pressure him, when you make him move off this spot, he's not as dynamic as some of these other quarterbacks. And when you're pairing him against some of these other players, those are the things that I can point out about Jared Goff, albeit an incredibly efficient player, that I don't necessarily have to point out with some of these other guys who might give me a little bit more when it comes to a higher ceiling with higher big time throws and things like that. So it's a long answer to your question that, yes, wins and success do go into it. But for me personally, it is a smaller piece of the pie where I would rather go okay, let me look at the overall last 2 years of your body of work necessarily than, okay, one game where you really played well and maybe outdueled the quarterback or is a big playoff win or something like that. So that's kind of how I come up with this as a bigger view and more volumed rankings over the last couple of years.
All right, you put CJ Stroud at 10 and Jordan Love at 11. Those guys have had tremendous. Well, CJ Stroud the entire last season was as good of a rookie as we've ever seen. That's one year though, Trev.
Right.
Jordan Love was a half a season. When we first saw him in September against the Lions crushed him, and people were questioning if he was the guy. Then in November, he beats the Lions at Thanksgiving, and he's the second coming of Favre and Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
So you've got both of them. I'm not saying miles ahead of Goff, but you put Stroud at 10 and Love at 11. Explain away. Because I don't agree. I mean, I think right now, yes, Jordan Love has the potential, especially with his legs. And of course, Stroud, started running last year for some odd reason, didn't run at Ohio State.
Right.
Probably take that into consideration, right? Yes,
I do. Yeah, the dynamic athletic ability of those two guys definitely goes into the equation. And when you look at CJ Stroud, I mean, just the things that he was able to do last year, it's hard to not look at his success and think that, okay, like I had some people even that I had CJ Stroud at 10, and they're like, how could you have him that low at 10 with how well he played last year?
Really?
And for that, then I obviously use kind of what you're talking about here. It's like, okay, well, hold on. I want to give CJ Stroud his credit, but it is only 1 year. Like we have sometimes seen quarterbacks have a really good one-hit wonder, and then it really just they're not able to get back to that past season. The same thing could be said for Jordan Love, who, there's some Packer fans who are like, whoa, look at the second half of the season. And I totally agree. From week 8 on, Jordan Love had an elite PFF passing grade. He had 27 big time throws. He only had 10 turnover-worthy plays. I mean, he was unbelievable, especially those last 4 games that he played. Incredible from Jordan Love. And it's hard to look at what Jordan Love did thinking that is his first year as a starter. And it's kind of the same thing with CJ Stroud. It's small sample size stuff, but it's hard for me to watch what they did last year and not think, man, look at what the ceiling could be for these players. Where again, for Goff, a very, very efficient player, but we sort of have seen what it's been like when things don't go according to plan or aren't on script. And maybe I'm being a little bit too hard on him as a creator, but a lot of those guys that I had over Jared Goff, it is simply because of what they are as creators outside of that offensive structure. It's hard for me to be too down on Goff because I don't want to punish him for having a good offensive coordinator, right? I don't want to punish him for having a good run game or a good O-line or good wide receivers like an Amon-Ra St. Brown to throw to. But again, I'm trying to separate these guys in their talent level and their situations. And I look at what Stroud and Love did, especially down the stretch last year. And both of those players, higher big time throw rate, higher PFF grade. Maybe lower turnover worthy play rate for Love on the second half of the season. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like, man, those guys were almost as efficient as as Jared Goff was, but they gave you a little bit of higher ceiling. So that's why I have those two players above him.
All right, more with our former friend. I'm just kidding. Trevor Sikkema from PFF. We will do that coming up next. But folks, we got the NBA Finals coming up. It looks like the Mavs and Celtics are going to be there. And if you want to get those tickets, you want to go to Boston or you're in Dallas or whatever, Gametime. The Gametime app makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. So with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Hey, Lions schedule's out. We know that. Rams, Bucks, Seahawks, Titans, Jags, Bears, Packers, Bills, and Vikings all coming in. There's some Monday night games on there, Sunday night games. Get your tickets now on the Gametime app. Easy to find, and you buy NFL tickets for every kind of event your area too. Like we got Tiger tickets if you want those as well. Hey, they're wearing those crazy uniforms and they're working. So get them now at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And we're talking to Trevor Sikkema from PFF. You got to excuse the voice. You got to fight through this stuff, Trev, right? It's like, I know, I mean, you went through it, I'm sure, once in a while. You get the cold and it's a battle. All right. Is Jared Goff? So Jared Goff has like a bad game against the Bears last year in Chicago. It's like, oh, see, Justin Fields outplays him. We need a guy like Justin Fields that can run. Do Jared Goff's bad games get more highlighted than others because of how long he's been in the league and what happened to him in LA, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Just because he's polarizing, right? I mean, like, it's the very reason why I'm on here talking about Jared Goff so much in the show, right? I think you have it's very much two different camps when it comes to Jared Goff. You have people who will say, "Man, he's a winner. He does what the offense asks of him. He's very efficient in what he does, and that's extremely valuable as a quarterback." And then you'll have other people that says, "Okay, well, look at when things don't go well, when he gets pressured, he can't create on his own. There's more dynamic quarterbacks out there," and those voices get very, very loud anytime. Yeah. You have a line, very clearly drawn on a prospect where it can be one of these two sides exactly. You're going to get too much praise when things go well, and you're going to get too much blame when they don't, right? I mean, like you talking to me about, okay, they face Jordan Love, they face the Green Bay Packers, Detroit kind of wipes the floor with them. Yeah, where is Jared Goff in that conversation compared to Love? The flip side of it is what you just said, right? The Bears maybe having a good game against the Lions, and Justin Fields maybe playing a little bit better than Jared Goff in a singular week, and people go and see, like you said, look, we need a guy like Justin Fields. We need somebody who's different. But if that were to happen, I would have very clearly told you last year, no, calm down. Jared Goff is still Jared Goff. And I think that it's always sort of difficult when you have these players who, again, it sounds really harsh to say like lower ceiling for Jared Goff, because the ceiling of him as a quarterback right now is that I believe that the Lions can win a Super Bowl with him. So it's weird to say like low individual ceiling with him. But when you have these lower ceiling quarterbacks where maybe the arm talent isn't, well, Goff's arm talent is great, but maybe the just dynamic ability isn't out of this world. It's not top tier, but the floor is a little bit higher. There's these back and forth that you get that people really just put themselves on one side or the other. So to me, Jared Goff is absolutely a victim of probably gets too much praise when things go well and probably gets too much blame when it doesn't. And the truth is often in between of what this quarterback really is.
All right, so you had Goff at 16. Kirk Cousins ahead of him. Come on. Really? And I know that this gets leapfrogged every year. It just seems like it's always Cousins v. Goff, but
yes,
I don't know. That one, you lost me on that one.
So he's obviously coming off the Achilles. So I think that goes into it. He's obviously older as a player, so that people could certainly use that. And there's nothing I can really say to that. But
yes,
Cousins has such a higher big time throw percentage. He has
really?
such
that's he's a simple stat.
And I mean, it kind of is, because these two players, I think Goff and Cousins, are similar in their styles. They're similar in what they want to do. They want to stay in the pocket. They want to go through progressions. They want to operate the offense. They want to be able to identify where they're going to go with the ball in the pre-snap and be able to already know exactly what's going to happen once things start moving really, really fast. And I think these two quarterbacks are really good at both of those things. They're not really mobile players. If you move them off their spot, they sometimes struggle. But Cousins is much better in our system, graded-wise, under pressure. And his big time throw percentage is just so much higher. And for me, that means that this is somebody who is pushing the ball deeper down the field a little bit more. He's somebody who's pushing the ball into tight windows a little bit more, and he's playing better under pressure. And if that's the criticism of this archetype of quarterbacks, Cousins does it better than Goff does in our system. And so, again, if Lion fans are sitting here saying we wouldn't trade, there's no way we'd ever trade Jared Goff for Kirk Cousins.
No.
Hey, I get it, but for what our numbers are and how we have watched these quarterbacks over the last couple of years, he is just better in those areas where if you're going to criticize this archetype of quarterback, his numbers fight it better than Goff does.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Will Goff's big time throw percentage go up this year if Jamison Williams is what everybody thinks he's going to be now?
It should.
Is it just simple as that?
It should, right? Because a big time throw isn't necessarily like 20 or more yards, right? A big time throw it's a little bit subjective, but we want it to have a little bit of subjectivity to it, because we want to be able to identify a big time throw when we see it, right? Because if we sit here and we say, oh, here's this exact definition of a big time throw. You say, okay, it's got to be at least 20 yards down the field. It's got to hit the wide receiver in stride, and it's got to like be for like in a major portion of game. Well, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, what about the 12-yard throw that he ripped through 2 linebackers for a first down in a major crucial part of 4th down? We want to give that a big time throw too. So I think that, to answer your question, it's not always those bigger, deeper throws that get the big time throw label, but the further you push the ball deep down the field, the much more likely it is that you're going to get a big time throw in our system. So if Jameson Williams is progressing the way that it sounds like he is, yes, I could absolutely see Goff, maybe even, I don't know his Rams numbers off the top of my head, because I know his big time throw numbers were way higher when he was in McVay's system, but I could think that he could be near career highs in total big time throws for a season and big time throw percentage. And if that's the case, then obviously now we've got to get into a conversation where it's like, okay, wherever you believe Jared Goff's ceiling is, he's pretty dang close to it. Like if you're going to be a lot lower on Jared Goff, if his big time throws go up big time this year, you're pretty much hitting whatever that ceiling is. And if you believe that he is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, then those numbers will obviously only help that case, because it'll be the best, most aggressive version of Goff that we have seen since he's become a Detroit Lion. So yes, I think that Jameson Williams could have a big impact on how we see Jared Goff moving forward.
Who else have you gotten flack from besides me? I saw Caleb Williams is on the Goff tier. He's 19.
Yes.
So I'm sure you got some heat for that, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of heat for it, especially from my fellow Tampa friends, because I had Baker Mayfield 1 spot below Caleb Williams. So, they're obviously saying like, hey, how could you put a rookie above, Baker Mayfield? And look, I will fully admit there's 2 ways that you can do this exercise. You can either have every rookie quarterback at the very end of the list and just say, as the caveat of like, hey, they haven't played, but I'm a draft guy. It's hard for me to do that, right? It's hard to watch how these guys played in college, grade them, have scouting reports of them, and then genuinely in good faith just go, yeah, I mean, I'm going to rank Caleb Williams 28 just because he hasn't taken a snap. That's more disingenuous to me. I'd rather put him in the list. And if you got a problem with where I have him in the list, that's fine. But the people who are like, how could you even have a rookie on this list? It's like, he's going to start, right? I'm predicting this is my ranking of quarterbacks going into the season. So he's going to start. It's not like he's not going to start. So that was a big one that I think caught a decent amount of flack. 2 obviously is 1. I get a little bit for, CJ Stroud and Jordan Love not being as high. I'm trying to think. Obviously, like Goff was 1 because he's been successful before. And then Dak. I think Dak is the other one where I had Dak at 6.
Yep.
And I have Jalen Hurts at 9, for example. And there's a lot of people that's like, okay, well, Jalen Hurts has to be above Dak. And it's like,
not last year. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is like, you look at Dak, and that's why, and I said this in the little blurb with him being at number 6. It sucks so bad that the Cowboys didn't just lose the wild card round.
Right.
I mean, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen Dak Prescott play those first 3 quarters.
Right.
So that sucked. I wish they would have just, like, if they were going to lose, I wish they would have just lost in a normal way, because we wouldn't have to have this conversation as passionately as we do. But I think, Tua, Dak, Goff, and then where Caleb Williams was at number 19, I think were the big ones.
Trev, you're always a great sport. We love having you on. Keep up the great work, and don't take it too personally when you'll hear from more Lion fans out of Memorial Day for sure. But thanks for coming on.
It's okay. I can promise you that the second the season gets kicked off, Lions are going to be awesome, and I'm going to tweet about how awesome they are, and hopefully they'll take me back for the for the praise that I'll be giving them if they're able to make this run. We think they're going
no doubt. All right, brother. Great to see you.
Appreciate it, Matt. Anytime.
Trevor Sikkema with us from PFF on Memorial Day, Monday, Locked On Lions.